Hi everyone, this is Kasia Zmokla. Welcome to my channel where you will always find photo editing training and educational videos to help you grow as an artist and photographer. Today's video was requested by Trini Capon. I was asked to take two different images and use the color wheel to grade the images to make them look the same signature look. So this is what we are going to be doing today. I'm going to take this image, I'm going to add a style to it, I'm going to color grade it. So this is the original raw file, this is starting point, and I'm going to recreate this style. Then I have just taken two other images from the same photo shoot, so they were taken during the same morning and we have the same lighting conditions. So just to check that the style, that the color grading will work across other images. So these are original raw files and here are the images after reapplying the style. So at this point I might say we have the signature look that we would like to apply across more images taken during different time with different lighting conditions. So we will be taking this portrait. So here I have already applied the style and this is the original image. So if we compare this one with this one, you can see that they sit in a different color space. That one is more about brown warm tones. We have some neutral grays, but they are just completely different. That one is much softer. We have the fog here. So we will be working towards unifying the look for both of them, and I will recreate the style on the portrait. So we'll be able to save our set of adjustments as a style and reapply it to bigger batch of images in the future to create a consistent portfolio. So let's jump right into it. Okay, so here we have our original image. Let's take a look at the histogram. So as we can see, the image is pretty well exposed. We have nice amount of data stretched across the whole graph. So it shows that we have some dark tones, we have mid-tones, we have some highlights. We have this gap of information to the right, which indicates that there are no strong highlights visible in the image, but the photo was taken during very foggy morning, during the very misty lighting conditions, and the graph represents perfectly the mood, the atmosphere. So just to start on the right side, let's select the background layer and let's just apply auto levels. This can be only applied on the background level. So by clicking on the second icon, I have applied the auto levels and this increased contrast a little bit in my image. So this is before, this is the after, and as you can see, it has stretched the data across the whole graph, which is going to be helpful when we will be working on our style with the curves tool. So to me, the highlights are a little bit too bright, so I'm going to push a notch to the back, the white point. So something like this should be fine. So this is what I'm going to be doing on the background layer, and because we are going to create a style in this video and be able to save the style and reapply it to different images, we will be working only on one layer. If you want to save a style in Capture One, you have to keep all your adjustments on one single layer. So all the adjustments that are specific for the particular image should be done on a background layer. So by this I mean correcting the exposure, maybe correcting the contrast a bit. So once you are happy with your basic luminosity adjustments, you can apply style to your images. This is very important because if you want to apply a style, you want to be working on images that are already correct in terms of exposure. You don't want to include inside your styles adjustments that are correcting luminosity levels. So having that said, we have our background layer. Let's start working on stylizing the image. Before we do just that, let's analyze the image in terms of color. So I'm going to super quickly take a screenshot of our image, and I'm going to jump over to the Chrome browser, and we will be working in Adobe Color Wheel. So this is super useful, super helpful. I want you to start using this tool if you don't know it yet, if you are not using it. It is really helpful when you want to harmonize colors in your image and when you want to analyze your images in terms of color. So let's jump over to Extract Theme. Here you can import your image. So I'm going to select my recent screenshot. So here we are. This is the image, and automatically Adobe Color tool extracted the most important color samples that it believes are characteristic for this image. So I believe these are spot on, so we can manually move those circles around, but I think they represent very well colors that are present inside the image. So now if we hit color wheel, we can see the same color samples and we can see how they are positioned inside the color wheel. And by having those colors mapped inside the color wheel, we can create our game plan for color grading. So we can see straight away that these colors are sitting very near one to each other on the color wheel. So we are working with analogous color palette in this case. All the colors are quite muted, they are quite dark. So let's take a look at the image again. We have low contrast here, and the image has this sort of muddy look to it, which I don't like. So to make this image more dynamic, to make it more interesting, to introduce color contrast, I have decided to go for quite a strong change, quite a strong adjustment, and I want to introduce very strong color contrast inside this image. So I will be pushing all the colors that are sitting in this range, in the greens. So everything that is sitting starting from the oranges through the yellows through the greens, I will try to compress the palette to push all these colors sitting inside this color spectrum towards the oranges. So that way we will have our grays, but instead of those greens we will be working with yellows. So this is my game plan for the color grading. Let's quickly jump back to Capture One and let's start working on our image. So as you can see here, all these colors are sort of muddy. They are not really saturated. We have some luminosity contrast, but in terms of colors, the image is very flat and not really pleasing. So I've decided to go for something entirely different. So let's start working on our style. As I have mentioned before, we have to create a style on one single layer, so that way we will be able to save a style for the future. If you will create a style, if you will add several different adjustments on several different layers, what I like doing, in fact, I like seeing all my adjustments on separate layers, and that's what I tend to do, because this allows me very quickly identify which adjustment is sitting on which layer, and I can fine-tune it super quickly. But if you want to save all your adjustments as a style, bear in mind that you will be better off if you will be working on one single layer. So let's just rename this layer to style. I have created new field adjustment layer. This is our layer, and let's rename it. Let's call it style. So on the background layer, we have run the auto levels adjustment, and on the style, we will do everything else apart from the custom vignette. So let's begin with HDR tool. I would like to take a look at my highlights and at my shadow. So as we can see here, we are losing some detail in the shadows. So I want to open them up a little bit. So I will be pushing my shadow sliders towards the right. So I believe something around 24, let's go for 25, should be fine. So this is before and this is the after. When it comes to the highlight slider, I'm going to check if we can recover some highlights as well. So by pushing it to the left, I'm going to go for quite a strong value, because that way I'm harmonizing the sky with the foreground. So this is before, this is the after. Maybe this is a little bit too much, so I'm going to go for maybe -50. So on our style layer, we have adjusted the highlights and shadows. So this is before, this is the after. So now let's take a look at our curves. When it comes to the curves, I'm going to use this tool to further manipulate with luminosity. I'm going to make some fine adjustments on contrast, and this will be part of a style. So I'm not going to be working on curves on the background layer, because on the background I have just run the auto levels adjustment, and once the image looks fine in terms of luminosity, now I will be performing adjustments on curves, and this I want to be reapplying to different images. So the curves adjustment will be an inherent part of my style. Let's start with the RGB, and I quite like starting out working with curves with the ready presets. So let's move over towards the hamburger icon and let's select contrast RGB. So that way Capture One automatically added 3 control points and it created contrast. So this is a bit too much. I'm going to fine tune it. So first of all, I don't want my highlights to go that strongly. I don't want to have them that bright, because I have just corrected this with my HDR tool. So I'm going to just move this control point downwards, and this will darken my highlights. So all the right hand side of this graph is representing bright tones. We have midtones in the middle, bright tones to the right, and shadows and dark midtones to the left. So I'm going to go for something like this, and I think I will go for subtle matte effect here. So I will be lifting my blacks. So I'm pushing my black point upwards. This one I will move a notch upwards as well. This control point I'm going to delete because it is anchoring my curve, it is keeping it flat, and I would like it to be a bit more dynamic. So I have selected the control point and I'm going just to hit delete to get rid of it. So that way I'm moving closer to the effect that I like. Let's just make the highlights a little bit less prominent, a little bit less soft. So I want to maintain this misty atmosphere. I don't want to introduce any strong contrast to this image. When it comes to this point, I'm just going to lift it a little bit to make my dark midtones a little bit brighter, and the dark point, I think here it works quite well. Okay, so we've been working with the RGB curve. This is before and this is the after. So let's now jump over to the Luma curve. With Luma curve, I want to just brighten the image overall. So I'm just going to go for one control point and let's just push it upwards. Let's just brighten the image a notch. So something like this, and maybe one more here to add a little bit more light to the dark shadows. So, okay, something like this. My sky got bright again, so let's just quickly jump back to the HDR tool, and I'm going to push my highlights still a little bit more to the left. So now I'm at -66. So let's zoom in and we can see that with the curves, if I just press and hold Alt key, This is before and this is the after. So we've been working with curves. So before we jump into working on color, I want to give you one tip that is quite important, but not many of you are using this. So I believe by default, Capture One loads with very dark color as for the background. So when you have very dark or when you have black, the images look really good. The dark background just makes the images pop. All the colors are looking super vibrant. But this is not the best idea, specifically when you are working on luminosity adjustments, because when you have the black background or dark background, you will tend to make your images way darker than they should be. So regardless what is your destination medium, if you are working for a print, if you will be showing your images at large size on a digital display, or if you want to just present your images as small thumbnails at social media, it is a really good habit to change your background to white. Okay, so at this point we are ready to start working on color. So we are still on our style layer. We are not going to be creating any additional layers. Let's just move over to the color tab. And here we will be working with color editor, and we will be working further on with color balance. So when it comes to color editor, we will be using advanced and skin tone. So let's begin with the advanced. Just make sure that you are on your style layer. This is very important because only this will enable you to save all your adjustments as a style. So in our advanced tab, we are going to sample colors here and adjust them to create our color grading. So let's get the color picker, and first I'm going to adjust the blues. If we quickly check the color readouts, here we have 97 for the red, 117 for the green, and 135 for the blue. So I want to push all these grays, all these sort of neutral grays more towards the cyans. So if we could quickly jump back to the Adobe Color tool, I want to push these colors towards cooler part of the spectrum. I want to inject a bit of cyan, and then I'm going to create really a strong dramatic color shifts for the greens, and I will push them towards those warm orangey tones. So I will be working towards complementary color harmony, and I want to get somewhere around here. So let's jump back to Capture One. So I'm going to pick my picker tool, and I'm going to start with the blues. So we can quickly take a color readouts. We have 97 for the red, 117 for the green, and 135 for the blues. So I will be pushing colors in this image towards complementary color harmony. So I want to make my grays in the image a little bit cooler. I will be injecting a hint of cyan, and the greens I'm going to create a super dramatic color shift, and I want to push them towards oranges and yellows. So let's take our first color sample. Let's click somewhere here. Now let's make sure that the whole saturation range is included. So I'm going to click on this icon here. And now I want to just check what is included in the selection. So let's just click on this little icon here. Everything that is grayed out is excluded from my color selection, and everything that has this quite soft cyanish tint is included. So I want to maybe increase the selection color range. I want to make sure that those darker blues are included as well. So I will be injecting in all these colors that are including in my selection, I will be injecting more cyan. So let's switch off the preview of my color selection, and let's start now manipulating with the hue. First of all, maybe let's push smoothness all the way to the right. So this will make sure that transitions between my colors will be as soft and as harmonious as possible. So when it comes to the hue, I want to push my slider towards the left, so that way I'm operating upwards on the color wheel. The dot represents the color that I have sampled, and I want to add more cyan. So I'm going upwards here, and this I can achieve by pushing my slider in the hue towards the left. So you can see how this affected the image. This is before, this is the after. And I think -25 works quite well. I think I will go a little bit lower with saturation, so maybe not that far, something about -9 works well. Okay, let's now take a second color sample. So having the picker selected, I'm going to actually zoom in a little bit and target those sort of warm greens. So I'm going to click somewhere here and let's zoom out. Let's now adjust this color. So I'm going to click again on this icon to make sure that the whole saturation range is included, and I'm going to extend the range of colors that are included in my selection. So here I want to increase smoothness as well, and let's just include more of the oranges here, and let's include all the greens. So when it comes to this color, I just want to take down saturation a bit, because I will be targeting this color with the skin tone tool. Okay, so this is preparation for the big shift that I'm going to perform in the skin tone tab. So let's jump over to the skin tone tab. And for some of you, it might get confusing that I'm going to use the skin tone tab, the skin tone tool, for landscape photography. But this is just the name of the tool, and actually the functionality works towards unifying your selected color range, unifying your selected hues. So this is super helpful when you want to compress a selected color palette, or when you want to make a really dramatic color shift. So in theory, it sounds quite complex. So let's jump right into action, and let me in fact demonstrate how you can work with this tool. So we have our color picker selected, and let's just click somewhere around here. So here, the same as in the advanced tab. First of all, we want to make sure that the whole saturation range of the sampled color is included. So now we have our dot positioned quite near to the middle of the color wheel. So the nearer the dot is to the color wheel center, it means that the color is less saturated, the color that we have sampled. So this clearly shows that the strongly saturated greens and strongly saturated yellows are excluded from our color selection. And this will definitely cause trouble, because we will be working towards strong color shift. So let's just click on this icon here to make sure that the whole saturation range is included. So now, as a next step, I'm going to extend the color selection. So when I was sampling the color, I have clicked somewhere here, and by default Capture One loaded this selection, but I want to extend it. So I want to be shifting towards the orange all the colors that are sitting from the cyans through the greens, through the yellows, and all the way up to the oranges. So now, two super important things. So here inside this selection are visible all the colors that will be affected by this color adjustment. So we will be working on super strong color shift, and all these colors that are visible here inside will be affected, will be changed, will be compressed and pushed towards the selected hue. And how we can select the hue. This is second super important thing, maybe the most important thing in the whole video. This can be actually adjusted by repositioning the circle, by repositioning the dot. So I haven't touched amount and uniformity yet, but you will see in a second how this will affect our adjustment. So in the amount, you will be adjusting your hue. So here I'm just going to go for quite a small value, something around 1.5 4. When it comes to saturation, I will go for lower saturation, something maybe -10. When it comes to lightness, let's make it a little bit darker. So now I'm adjusting values for the sampled color. So this is the sample, the original color that I have sampled from the image, and this is how the sample looks like after my adjustments. So let's now focus our attention on the uniformity part. So here is where the whole beauty lies of the skin tone tool, of the skin tone tab. By increasing hue value, you are applying uniformity across the selected hue range in your image. So in other words, you are compressing your palette. So everything inside the selection, everything starting from the cyans, through the greens, through the yellows, and all the way up to the oranges, goes unified, and the selected hue that I have picked is indicated by this little dot here. So all these colors from this selected spectrum are pushed towards those orangey yellows. The very important thing is that I can reposition it, so if I would like to put it here, everything will be pushed towards the greens. So here I will be compressing my palette towards the yellows, and I want to go, in fact, towards those orangey yellows, towards those warm tones. So we've been working with the hue, and we can apply uniformity across saturation in your image. So this I'm not going to push all the way to the right. Something like this, I believe, works well. Typically, I never touch lightness slider because this will sort of push all the luminosity levels across your selected color range towards similar value. And this will basically make your image flat. So I have already made some effort on my curves adjustments, on levels adjustments, so I don't need to touch this at all. Okay, so we have performed our color shift, and now we can fine-tune it. So let's go back here. I'm going to push smoothness all the way to the right just to have the maximum value. So this way we can see that the transition between my selection and other colors that are present in the image is smooth. If we go with the smoothness towards the small value, we are seeing that the transition is harsh. And in fact, if we zoom in, let's go for 100% magnification level, so you can see how this affects the image. Especially here, transition between the range that was selected and the rest of the greens, we can in fact include them by pushing this a bit lower. This is really harsh and it doesn't look natural, so let's go the other way, and that way you can see that we are including more and the color transition is really soft. This is important, especially when you are shifting your colors that strongly as we are doing now here when creating this style. Okay, so let's now take a look at a quick before and after. So this is before working with color editor, and this is the after. Let's now fine-tune our style with color balance. I'm going to put the color editor back and pick my color balance. Let's open up the tool. So with this tool, I'm going to adjust colors, and I will be adjusting my luminosity as well. I want to add a little bit more contrast to the image. So when it comes to the master tab, I'm going to leave it as it is. I'm happy with the colors I have created. I don't want to introduce any color cast. When it comes to the shadows, I want to inject more cyan to the shadows. So I'm going to go for something like this, and let's try touching a bit the slider to the right. That enables us to either brighten the selected luminosity range or darken. So we are focusing on the shadows. With the slider to the left, you are adding color, and with the slider to the right, you can further manipulate with luminosity. So if we go upwards, we will be brightening the shadows, and if we go downwards, we will be darkening the shadows. And I really like this effect. So this is adding mood to the image, this is adding contrast, but it is only darkening the shadow range in the image. So not many of you are using this, and I think this is really, really helpful, and it can work beautifully together with the curves. So with this, you can very intuitively adjust your luminosity when working on color, when fine-tuning color. So we can add a bit more of saturation as well to the shadows, so they are getting this nice cyanish tone to it. So here, let's fine-tune the color. Okay, something like this to complement our oranges. Let's now jump over to the mid-tone, and when it comes to the mid-tone, I'm going to add just a bit of warmer tones. So let's go for something like this, a little bit of orange, and I'm going to brighten the mid-tones a notch with my luminosity slider. So this is all the way up, this is all the way down, and I want to go for somewhere around here. Okay. When it comes to the highlight, I want to leave them neutral, so I'm not going to manipulate with this tool. Okay, so in terms of color, we have finished working on our style. Now we can add maybe a little bit of clarity. So we are still on our style layer. Let's move over to the clarity and let's zoom in. So we are looking at 100% magnification level. Let's pan around. So now we can add a notch of clarity here. So this is 10 before and after. Okay, so things are getting a little bit more crispy, but I want to maintain my misty condition. So if we have fog, if we have this sort of super soft light, we will never have any strong contrast, and just pushing clarity further will not look good, will not look natural. We can try to add a bit of structure. This will be visible specifically here in this part of the road. So, okay, we had 10 here, and let's go for a bit more for the structure. So this actually works very well. We have now the contrast between the foliage, between the leaves and the concrete here. So let's just see before adding clarity. So the image is a little bit softer, and after. So nothing super strong, nothing dramatic, but it does its job. And let's now on a separate layer add a custom vignette just to close the composition here at the bottom. So I'm going to add new filter adjustment layer. Let's quickly rename it to vignette. And I'm going to use the radial gradient, and let's make something quite wide because I want this to be applied only at the bottom. I don't want to darken the tree. So by having the gradient selected, if I press M on the keyboard, I see the preview of my mask, and here I'm just going to go down with exposure just to darken the road because it creates just too much of this empty dead space. Okay, I think this is a little bit too much. Let's just push it lower. Okay, so this is the selection, and this is without, and this is with our vignette. Okay, so at this point we have our style ready. So if we switch off, if we go to our style layer, if we switch this off, this is our image only with the basic luminosity adjustments that we performed on the background layer. So here we have applied auto levels and we have applied the vignette. We can switch off the vignette as well. So this is our original image without any adjustment. Let's just change this to full view. So this is before, this is after applying the levels, and this is after applying our styling. This is after working with color and after adding a bit of clarity. Then we have added vignette. Okay, so our style is ready. Let's now make sure that it works across other images. So first of all, I'm going to try to reapply it to two other images that were taken during the same photo shoot, during the same lighting conditions. So this is the first test that your style should pass. There's no point in creating a style that will be working only on one image. So there's no point on saving such a set of adjustments as a style. Okay, so let's maybe, before we save a style, let's just quickly copy all these adjustments from one image. So the image is selected. We have this gray border around the image that indicates selection. So let's now copy all the adjustments. So the image that we want to copy the adjustments from is selected. Let's hit the arrow pointing upwards. So I have copied all the adjustments to the clipboard. And now I want to apply them to this image. Let's click on the arrow pointing downwards, and I want to apply them to this image. So in terms of color, everything looks good. This image definitely requires some luminosity adjustments, but I believe that can be done very, very quickly on the background layer with the auto levels adjustment, because the style will be saved from this layer, but your levels adjustments were performed on the background layer. And if we just take a quick look at the original raw files, you can see that this image has way less contrast, is way brighter than these two other images. So we need to unify them in terms of luminosity. This should be always done before applying any styles. So let's hit Y again. This is the image after applying my adjustments, and I'm going to very quickly jump back to the background layer and reset levels and hit again on the second icon. So this applied auto levels on this particular image. Before, I have copied all these adjustments from the first image, and this simply didn't match the histogram. It didn't match the luminosity levels of the second frame. So we have simply reapplied the auto levels. Let's do the same for the last image. So we are on the background layer, and we can see here that those points, they simply don't match the image. Let's reset and let's hit again. So, okay, everything looks way better now, and we can now fine-tune the luminosity levels. However, I can say that the style works well across other images from the same photo shoot. We won't be now spending time on fine-tuning the second and the last image. What I would do is definitely I would go to my style layer and I would work on curves. So here I would just make those brighter midtones a little bit darker. I would introduce a little bit more contrast, but this video is already quite a long, so I'm not going to do this here. I will maybe switch off vignette. Yes, definitely by manipulating with curves, this image will benefit. So let's maybe push this point a little bit downwards, and I think it helps to get a little bit more balance. When it comes to this one, I think I would brighten the shadows. So in the style, I would revisit my shadow or maybe the blacks in the HDR tool. So if I go here, I am just opening up the shadows, and definitely I would add as well a gradient here at the very top, so I can make the sky a little bit darker and just to get back some of the details that were visible in the sky. So super quick before and after, but basically the point is that the style that we have created for the very first image on our style layer is working. So now let's jump over to our portrait. This image was taken during entirely different photo shoot, different lighting conditions. And the easiest way would be to, first of all, just copy all these adjustments from the image. So I can just click on the arrow pointing upwards and have the image selected and apply these adjustments. So this is one way. The other way is to save your style, and then you will have your style visible here in the styles in Capture One, and you will be able to apply them in the future to other images. So to save the style, you need to be in your Layers tab, and here just select the layer that includes all these adjustments that you want to have saved as a style, and simply click on these three little dots and select from here Save Adjustments as a Style. So here you can further tick what you want to have included in your style. So for example, you might not want to have details or exposure, but I would suggest having all these positions ticked, so everything that you've done on this layer will be saved as a style. So let's just cancel and let's jump back to the portrait. So looking at this image, I must say that the colors work very, very well. The image requires some adjustments in terms of luminosity. So first of all, I would like to get back some of the detail in the highlights. This can be done as well on the background layer with the HDR tool. So I just want to get back some of the detail in the skin, some of the highlights, and I would say that on my style layer I can fine-tune the clarity. I don't need to enhance the structure. So I would go down maybe even to 0 with structure. So let's double click the zeroed out the structure, and if we take a look at the clarity, I think the image doesn't need that strong adjustment, just to keep it consistent with the other series, but something around 6 I believe works well. So of course the image that we have applied the style to, the original raw file, I haven't done any retouching. If I would be working on this image, I would definitely fix few things here and there on the skin, and then it would be good to go. So just to maybe check another image, I have copied another portrait from the same series. So from here we can copy all these adjustments and apply them to the second image. So we can see that it works really, really well. So we have created a set of adjustments, we have created a style that can be reapplied to entirely different images, and that way we can achieve a consistent look across a portfolio. So I'm not saying that this is going to be working 100% for every single image that you will apply a style to, but this can be definitely a starting point if you want to have a set of different images that are consistent in terms of lighting and in terms of color. So these first 3 images were taken during very misty conditions, misty weather, so the light is way softer. And these 2 portraits have different light and the colors are more saturated, but definitely we can take our style and we can treat it as a starting point, as a basis, and we can start from there and adjust further colors if needed and luminosity. So let's just get back. This is the first image that we have started working with. This is the second image that we have applied our style. This is the third one. So this is our landscape series, and then we have applied the style to these portraits. If you're getting value from this video, I will be super happy if you hit the thumbs up and if you subscribe to my channel, so that way you will make sure that you won't miss any of my future videos. So today we've been talking about creating a style that can be applied across multiple different images to create a consistent signature look. And if you would like to learn more about Capture One, I have a comprehensive course. Link is available in the description to this video. So thanks for watching. This was Kasia Zmokla from Digital Art Classes, and I will see you in the next video.